Hi there, my name is Josh, and this is Josh is Making Music. Today I wanted to go through a patch building tutorial for the Elektron Digitone. This is a patch that I made to use for a track called Phosphorus, which was part of an album called Valence Electrons, which total shameless plug, but if you haven't seen it already, I'll put a link to the video down in the description. I'm just really proud of how it came out, and sorry if it's kind of lame for me to be plugging it in another video, but the sound that we're going to be making today is this one, which I have called Spaceship Launch because in my mind it makes me think of Metroid Prime. So before we get into it, I think that we should talk a little bit about how the Digitone works and how it is exactly that the Digitone makes it sound. It uses what's called FM synthesis, which FM synthesis, at least as far as my experience goes, is kind of notorious for being very, very complex and difficult to explain and understand. And the Digitone does make it a lot easier than something like a Yamaha DX7 or what I have experience with, which is the synth plugin Dext, which is really powerful, but does kind of throw you into the deep end. Anyway, the way that FM synthesis works is it's built around sine waves. So what's a sine wave? This is a sine wave. It sounds very nice, very delicate, very gentle and reassuring. But what we're able to do with FM synthesis is that we can make other sine waves modulate the pitch of the sine wave that we just heard. Now, that was a lot of jargon, and I think a better way to demonstrate would be to just show you. I'm going to start changing the ratios of waves that we're hearing, and you're going to hear how it changes. When I turn it down, we get a lower sound. I turn it up, we get high piercing sounds that you probably didn't want to hear today. In FM synthesis, there's the waves you hear, which are called carriers, and then there's the waves that modulate the pitch of those carriers, and those are called modulators. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, a general catch-all term for your sine wave oscillators in FM synthesis is operators. And the way that you put those operators together, what's modulating what are you hearing, is called an algorithm. And if you look on the screen here on the Digitone, you'll see at the top it says algo, which is algorithm 1, and then it has C, A, and B. Those are our operators and their various ratios. And as I flip through the algorithms, you'll see that the way they're ordered on the screen changes. And then X and Y are kind of like our two outputs, and we can change the mix between X and Y to give our sounds different kinds of texture. Don't worry if that didn't click. I'll admit that while I am also trying to understand FM synthesis, it does at times, or I should say very often, confuse me because it is very complicated. And, if I'm able to get the Digitone working and make stuff I'm proud of, I really do think anyone can. That was not meant as a cell phone, but it kind of turned out to be. Anyway, what we're going to do for this sound is we're going to flip to algorithm 6. I like its nice square shape. And as you can hear, like before, this is our sound. We've got some nice sine waves. Great, not what we want. So I'm going to start changing around some of these ratios. And as I do, you're going to be able to hear how the sound changes. So here it is at the start, and I'm going to start turning the knob for B. Already very cool. Now we've got this nice low note. And I think that is really swell. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to turn operator A down to 0.25. You might not be hearing it yet, but I promise later you will. Very foreboding. When I mentioned before that modulators can modulate carriers, what I left out dramatically until this moment is that they can also modulate modulators, including themselves, which is part of what confuses me so much. But anyway, the way that it can work, at least on the Digitone, is with this feedback knob, I can send more of modulator A to itself. Now again, we're not really hearing anything, but what this can do, if I turn up the level of A in the synth menu, is we'll start to hear noise coming in. Now this is an important thing to know, I would say, for the Digitone. especially if you want to add noise to your patches, give them like a more sci-fi or like kind of lo-fi sound, because the Digitone doesn't have, at least as far as I know, a dedicated function to just add noise like you might find on a different like subtractive synthesizer. Now, we've got this with a little bit of noise. We can also fiddle with the harmonics. You can hear how it's changing the tone. I'm going to leave it at about 12.66. That's really what I'm feeling today. We have now set operator C is at its normal ratio 1, operator A is at 0.25, operators B are at 2 and 0.25. We're using algorithm 6. We've turned the feedback all the way up. Our harmonics are set to 12.66, and we've already got a sound that, in my opinion, very biased because I did just make it, is kind of like cool and sci-fi-y sounding. But I want ambiance, and I'm going to start getting that with the LFOs. Now, I've heard that the Elektron devices are just known for being modulation monsters. The only one that I have experience with is the Digitone, but the Digitone is really awesome about modulation. Not trying to sell you on it, of course, it is also quite expensive. But anyway, one of the things that you can modulate with the LFOs is you can have them change the ratios of those operators, which is really cool and offers a lot of opportunities for fun sound design, like what we are going to do now. So I've set the first LFO to modulate the offset for operator C. So it's going to slowly change, or quickly change, depending on how we set it, operator C's value. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the depth for that change be deep, but the speed be slow. And already you can hear that cool sound. I don't know what this motion is. Awesome. Now, we have it set to a triangle wave. I'm going to have it set instead to the ramp shape. So it'll go up and then drop down. Already, even more sci-fi-y. That's not a word. Now, we're going to use the second LFO as well. And we're going to send that second LFO to modulate the multiplier for LFO 1. So if you were confused by modulators modulating other modulators, we now have our LFOs modulating another LFO. Oh my gosh. But anyway, I'm going to set it to a sine wave. I like the nice smooth shapes of a sine wave. It kind of fits because, you know, we're doing FM synthesis. It's all about sine waves. And I'm going to turn the depth down just a little bit. And when I play it, you can hear how it's freaking out a little. So I fiddled with them a little bit more. I think that we are good with the LFOs. I set the speed for LFO 1 to 7.19, the depth to 60.91. For LFO 2, I set its speed to 6.41 and the depth to negative 0.43. And when I play a note, you're going to hear this. Awesome. Next step is effects. So I'm going to be honest, I just cake the effects on. Tons of reverb, pow, tons of chorus, all the delay. Will I regret this? Let's find out. I don't. It already sounds very science fiction-y. So yeah, and I should mention that a lot of this stuff is really supposed to be done to taste. You know, if you were making this patch at home and you try out these LFO settings and you're like, man, these LFO settings kind of suck, you know, change them. You don't owe me anything. We're going to go back to the amp because we're going to give this a nice long attack. We're going to set the sustain level all the way up and turn up the release. Cool. And bring the drive up. Yes. Nice, gritty, science fiction-y sounds. Very, very cool. I think that where we are about is like almost where I want us to be. The last thing is I would like to use the Arpeggiator to maybe tone things back a bit. To show you what I mean, I'm going to play our patch as it is now. And now I'm going to turn on the arpeggiator and play it like that. What the arpeggiator is doing, I'm just holding one note, but it's kind of like cutting the note off and re-triggering it. So instead of the single constant one, you get a sound that is like pulsing. And if I turn the tempo down, which is done with this knob, I knew that the whole time. You can hear that that slows down as well. The arpeggiator is going to be linked to the tempo. So with that, I think that we have made the sound that I would like to make. So we're pretty much where I think I would like for us to be. I think that the only step that really remains is to present this in a musical context. Now, as I mentioned, I've used it in another song before, and because I thought it was such an important sound to that song, I didn't feel totally right making like a whole other song, but I didn't want to just play something I've already made and published because I thought it might seem kind of lazy. So I just made a simple beat with it, and yeah. We'll close off with that. I want to thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope it was informative and educational, and those are the same word, and I meant to say entertaining. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting like. If you're new around here, please also consider subscribing. If you're a returning viewer, thanks so much for coming back. I really love the support that I've been getting. It's awesome and humbling. Anyway, I'm talking too much. Let's do some music.